The Green Hornet is one of the classic masked heroes from the 30s who battled against organized crime and others with his Korean sidekick Kato, using martial arts and all types of nifty Bond-like gadgets to disperse his enemies. This movie is a 2011 version of the famous and beloved series and movies that came before, and it completely shits on them by making this an unfunny comedy with unlikable characters and stupid jokes. Something which should not surprise you, since the Green Hornet is played by none other than the infantile, weed-smoking, douche and Carly bro Seth Rogen. It's no secret that I very much dislike Seth Rogen. I don't like his humor, his politics, his attitude, his face. I don't like him at all. I go blind into movies and I didn't expect him to be in here, but the second I saw his name I rolled my eyes. But let's give it a chance, shall we? It could be okay, right? It was not. Every scene with Rogen is the same stupid Rogen shtick. He plays a doofus who can't do anything and is quite frankly an annoying bro-fisting dickhead, much like Seth Rogen himself. Kato is treated as the hero, which is a nice thing to see, but he's underutilized in the film in favor of Seth and his stupid face. Having Edward James Olmos and Christopher Waltz doesn't help to bring this movie to any greater heights either, and Cameron Diaz is like a pearl among swines. If you haven't understood it by now, I utterly hated this movie, and most of it was thanks to the Seth Rogen effect. If he was exchanged for another actor and they dropped the weed-puffing comedy nonsense, it might have been more pleasing to watch. But alas, fuck Seth Rogen, fuck this movie. I'm gonna search for the real Green Hornet movies and series. Drop that. Captain Horatio Hornblower is a 1951 adventure movie about the captain with the same name who helms the British vessel HMS Lydia at the end of the 19th century. His travels take him across the Pacific Ocean, dealing with Spanish warships, South American rebels and a damsel who is kinda in distress and spends some time on the ship as they take her home. Of course romances happen and the harsh life on the ship is portrayed as well as it could be in a 50s movie. There's more things that happen and it's all quite nice to see. A good wholesome family movie that has something for everyone and can be viewed by any age. Performanced by Gert Griebeck and the other of the cast. Nicely done, and you grow fond of these people as they sail through the endless oceans. Movies about seafaring during this era has always been fascinating to me. Large wooden ships traversing a deadly ocean for months on end. Scurvy. Life on deck, not to mention the sea battles where two or more ships engage and blow each other to smithereens. How did they even get back to safe harbor after something like that is beyond me, but they did. It's all so foreign in an era where cross-continental travel is so easy. But then again, it's hard to imagine Roman soldiers walking across Europe to wage war as well. Horatio Hornblower is a great classic film and reminded me a little bit of the much later and much more serious Master and Commander with Russell Crowe. Granted, Master and Commander is much more dark, dangerous and much less colorful and giddy than this gem. Ships ahoy mateys. Smash that. Some Like It Hot is the infamous black and white classic with none other than Marilyn Monroe, where she does the whole boop boopy doo stick, and millions of men fell for her even more. Two musicians, played by Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, witness a Chicago mob execution and need to flee for their lives. While the mob hunts them, they get the opportunity to go to Miami dressed as women and stumble on an all-female band readying themselves for a gig over there. Lured in by the charming Sugar, played by Miss Monroe, they get a little caught up in their gig as women. Needless to say, things get even more complicated when love enters the equation and the mob is suddenly in Miami as well. Some Like It Hot is a delightful comedy with some great comedic timing and a cast of charming people. From beginning to end, it's simply a fun movie, and it's among the best movies of all time for a reason. What happens when two men disguise themselves and become part of a group of attractive women in a sleeping cart? When the vixen of the bunch all of a sudden becomes best girlfriends with you. Much like White Chicks, but a lot more fun and a lot more entertaining and a whole lot less annoying. Come to think of it, those two movies are kinda similar in a way, but this one is a classic and less ridiculous. Some Like It Hot is worth being on the best movies of all time list, so when you have a chance to see it, certainly do. Smash that. Lexx was sold to me to be an oversexual, borderline pornographic space adventure series that has quite the cult following. I'm sad to say that only part of that is correct. The Lexx is an all-powerful and alive insect ship that eats worlds, and this gets repeated in almost every episode, so be sure to remember that just in case you forget. It gets taken over by 4 people. A stupid security guard called Stanley, who is convicted of killing trillions, a hot love slave called Xef, who is sentenced to death for not performing her duties and mixes with something called a cluster lizard, and this is also something you'll hear almost every episode, a beheaded robot named 790 who gets injected with part of the programming intended for Xef and falls in love with the first person he sees, and finally Kai, an assassin who has been undead for 1,000 years and doesn't feel a thing. These 4 try to escape from the people who are chasing them using the Lexx, a sentient ship that's actually an insect with all kinds of gooey phallic attachments used for showering, meals and other tasks. It all looks nasty to be really. The food is goo, shower heads look like hairy dongs, hairy testicles hanging here and there for propulsion. Even a toilet that's a mouth licking your ass clean. Yes, you heard that right. A tongue licking your ass instead of wiping it with toilet paper. The 4 main characters involved have a special connection with each other, at least in such a way that they're all being cucked by Iakatha. Stanley wants to fuck anything with breasts that walks and would like to stick his hairy ballsack inside Xef. Xef is in love with Kai, who doesn't feel anything, and 790 first loves Xef and later Kai, who both of course want nothing to do with him. Not that he could, cause he has nobody to do the deed with. And then comes the sexual part of the show. Yes, there's nudity in the show, and fake phallic things, but I can't in good conscience call this a porno. I can't even call this erotic, even though there are some typical 90s nudescence with music, but it's not appetizing at all. There's a sense of sex all over the series, but they just don't get anywhere. Much like Leisure Suit Larry, it's a story about not getting any nookie. Where the first season deals with fleeing and is the most interesting season, the second expands on this by adding a big baddie. Season 3 spends an enormous amount of time between 2 planets and is some kind of story of a sort of afterlife and is incredibly boring. Season 4 brings us to a new galaxy and our Earth for even more excruciatingly bad episodes, ranging from a reality TV show to a Vietnam spoof and more. The show gets more and more nonsensical the more episodes pass and adds characters that, besides dumb or retarded, are also sexually repressed in some kind of way. The special effects look like crap. The decor, like mentioned, is ugly as fuck. The acting is subpar and the plot lines can be considered as coming from a semi-perverted 8-year-old's mind. Suffice to say that I'm not a big fan of Lexx, and I was glad that it was over when I was done watching it. I expected much more of this show, especially since people seemed to be so fond of it. There's something to be said about weird shows. There's even something to be said about David Cronenberg-like insect and flesh fetishes. Comedy and sex combined into something hilariously adult, but Lexx just doesn't cut it. It's eerily similar to Farscape, which also deals with a living ship, characters on the run and a whole lot of sexual tension, and Farscape, by far, is the better TV show. It's better written, better acted, and here's a couple of silly episodes. Season 1 of Lexx is by far the most interesting. Also featuring a young Eva Haberman as Xef, who unfortunately gets replaced by a more botoxed blonde called Xenia Seberg in Season 2. With Haberman's departure, so did the sex appeal for me, and without that even less was left to stick around. But I watched all 4 seasons and can now say I did. Be warned, dear viewer, Lexx wasn't my cup of tea, and I would suggest watching the far superior Farscape instead. Drop that. A man wakes up in a car crash. The driver and another passenger are dead. He doesn't remember what happened or who he is, and he is stuck. Here starts the story off wrecked, where Adrian Brody kinda imitates the story from 127 hours and adds more mystery to it. Who is this man? Why does he have a gun? Is he a good guy? Who's the person he's hallucinating? All this gets unraveled over the course of the movie as he tries to escape from his predicament and tries to get to safety, fleeing from nature, death, and cops that are possibly chasing him. Wrecked is a well-made movie that leaves you wondering enough about the character to keep you invested for the whole movie. Only at the end of the movie you feel a little bit cheated at how fast the truth is revealed, but by then you will have experienced over an hour of tense moments and fairly okay acting by Mr. Adrian. I'm the best actor in the world and deserve this Oscar, Brody. Check that. Revolutionary Road gives us Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet fresh out of the horror that was the Titanic, playing a married couple who traded their dreams for a white picket fence and a lovely home in suburbia. As time progresses, however, and the weight of parenthood and dead-end boring jobs becomes more prevalent, their relationship is tasked, and then they decide to turn their life round, at least up to a certain point. Revolutionary Road shows us how people's hopes and dreams get squashed by the expectations society puts on them, how youthful people's will to live gets turned into a will to survive and roll in the hamster wheel until death do us part. I expected Revolutionary Road to be a movie where two people yell at each other constantly, making me reminisce about all the times I experienced the same thing, but luckily it has some very nice moments and not a lot of arguments and drama at all. The insertion of certain characters is done excellently and adds a certain amount of anarchy in it without actually throwing a punker inside of the room. The movie ending had me in tears, and it made me think long and hard about the way people decide to live their lives, pressured, again, by societal norms. When those tears subsided, however, the real ending with the man on the sofa slapped me in the face even more. Go watch it. Smash that. Anthropophagus 2 is a very interesting movie title. It makes me think of sarcophagus, but of course it's not. I bothered to look it up and it means a cannibal, especially in legends or fables. I guess this distinction was important enough cause there's plenty of movies about cannibals already. Absurd and Monster Hunter are less interesting titles though, so let's look if the movie, which is a sequel by the way, is also interesting. In Anthropophagus 2, a strange man shuffles across the land killing people. Why? I don't know, but he does it, and he does it brutally. During one of his attacks he gets shot and killed. Until he rises from near death and mysteriously heals, after which he once again goes on a killing spree. This goes on until the movie ends, and that's about it, since this is a very simple Italian horror movie that doesn't do anything special besides having great gore scenes. Unfortunately, the movie has an excruciating long ending scene with some very annoying music blasting in your head for way too many minutes. And if I say long, then I actually mean long. Half an hour and probably more. It was too much and the noise made me want to turn it off. Psychological attack during a movie? Maybe, but where sound can be used effectively to scare you or make you tense, this only made me want to scream at the person who decided to put it in and poke a needle through the ears of the composer. Drop that. MacGyver, played by Richard Dean Anderson, not that other fool that plays a character with the same name in a lousy reboot, was one of my favorite shows from the 80s about a man who refuses to use guns and instead prefers his brain, his duct tape and his improvisational skills to get out of sticky situations. MacGruber is a parody of this character from a couple of SNL skits when those were still at least a little funny. And this is the movie they made based on that character from the skit. MacGruber is like MacGyver but more dumb. He doesn't shy from guns. At least, he lets others kill people with guns, and uses his charm and stupid jokes to get out of sticky situations. MacGruber is funny in the beginning, Nonsensical slapstick and dick jokes are about the highest form of humor you will experience in this film. The longer the movie goes, however, the less funny it gets, and a whole lot of great parodies are ignored in exchange for some stupid jokes that don't really land. I expected a lot more from this movie, but like said, it just doesn't deliver enough parody to be compelling to me. There aren't a lot of comedy movies out there that are great, especially not the ones from the last decade or so, and this one, even though it's okay in the beginning and a wee bit at the end, isn't one of the greats either. Just watch The Real MacGyver. Check that. Exorcismus is a movie about exorcism. Didn't expect that, did you? It's about a young girl who thinks that she is possessed and tries to find help with a local pastor, who just happens to be her uncle. Her parents aren't convinced that her problems are of a demonic nature and refuse to see the signs until, of course, it's too late. Exorcismus starts off as a fairly standard exorcism movie. There's a little bit of duality making you think it's all just in her head, but as the movie progresses it's clear that more is happening than just a sociopathic teenager. What makes this movie stand out is the conclusion to the movie offering something fairly special to the often oversaturated genre. It's not the most compelling and best made movie about exorcism, but it's better than most of the movies like this I've seen. Exorcismus is a good movie if you like exorcisms and all that stuff, but be warned that you're still walking into the lesser evil of this genre. Check that. In Attack the Gas Station, a bunch of teenage hoodlums take over a gas station in order to get money. This, however, proves more difficult than expected. Trying to solve their predicament, however, they get confronted with several patrons who almost discover what is going on. And when the cops and a rival gang drops by, things get even more complicated. Attack the Gas Station isn't an action movie as you might expect from the title. It sounded like a Korean version of Attack on Precinct 13, but this doesn't have that much action at all. The whole tone as well is much more loose, even though there's some typical Asian kicking violence and a lot of angry yelling like only Asian people can do. No offense to other ethnicities, I'm sure you can yell too. Attack the Gas Station is funny, it's poignant, and it even had a music scene with dancing, so that should tell you enough about what type of movie this is. It's also a little bit more complex than just a heist movie, as we go into why these youths are doing what they are doing, with a resolution for each one of AM at the end. Again, a very endearing Asian movie that is a little too long than it needed to be, but that's clearly a westerner with a low attention span speaking, I guess. Check that.